Hello my friends, welcome to this week's video. Today we are going to be looking at the 2023 Mazda 3. This is the Sport with a 2.5 liter turbo engine, and it's also fitted with all-wheel drive. First things first, I do want to apologize for the condition of my voice. I got angry at my children and started screaming at them, and then punishment being what it is, I completely lost my ability to speak. I've regained some of it, but I am not in my usual fighting form, so my apologies for that. Let's talk about the looks of this car. This particular generation was introduced in 2019, and it was beautiful then, and it is beautiful now. There is little I love more than a sporty looking hatchback. This is an absolutely fabulous looking car. They have not changed this vehicle excuse me, in all the years since this generation was introduced. You still get the huge Mazda grille, which has kind of become their standard look, and it's just fabulous. It's low slung. It's got a big ass on it, big rims. It's got an aggressive suspension, but it's still useful. It's low to the ground, but not too low. You don't scrape or bump as long as you pay attention. I love this thing. The profile is elegant, simple, and that's probably, when you get it right, that's why you don't have to change it. All right, since we're outside, let's take a look at the cargo area before we head inside the vehicle. Very decent space. The roof line remains relatively high, no matter how low slung the vehicle is. So you do get decent space back here. You've got the parcel shelf cover, of course, and then all this space in the back. It's really nice. There is no, this is going to be a bit of a theme, but there is no electricity back here. There's no power, no nothing. You do get a light, but that's it. And that is going to be, excuse me, sorry for the voice, that is going to be a theme with this vehicle. It is a bare bones presentation, and that's just the first of many things that we will talk about with regards to the design of this vehicle. All right, we have moved inside the vehicle. So we'll start with the dash cluster. Your tachometer and your fuel gauge and temperatures are fixed gauges. They don't change. The gauge in the middle is digital. It's always your speedo. You can tinker with a little bit of the driver information, but for the most part, it doesn't change. It's effectively just static. So on the steering wheel, you've got all the usual stuff: audio controls, telephony, cruise control, and that's it. You also get, of course, your horn, etc. Interestingly, you do get a power driver's seat, and let me open the door here. This is where the memory buttons are. This is not the most convenient place to put those. I'm not quite sure why they're there. I would have preferred them to be in the traditional spot up here, but nevertheless, we do get a Bose stereo in this thing. It's got these nice aluminum speaker grills, and the stereo itself is decent, not as loud, excuse me, as I expected, but nevertheless a good quality audio from the stereo. All right, so we have to talk about the infotainment system. So the infotainment system on the 3 is a relic. It is very old technology. It's tiny. That screen is microscopic. Even for, modern cars, the screens are just bigger. This is very, very small. In 2019, maybe it was sort of an acceptable size. Even then, it feels like it might have been a bit small. Now, it feels like really, really tiny. It's not touch activated. The only way to interact with the screen is through your dial button down here, this huge thing here. It works fine enough, don't get me wrong, but the screen is so far away when you're sitting, you can't touch it anyway. But we do, that is the future, right? That sort of interaction with the infotainment. So it feels very dated. The system isn't even that old, but it feels very dated. It has wireless, CarPlay and Android Auto. Those are wired. That is again, little things that I'm sure that they can change, with some sort of mid-cycle refresh, but they haven't done that. The one thing I did really want to point out were the cameras. Granted, it's rainy today, but that doesn't change the reality that these cameras are grainy and dark. You can't see much from them, even when they're clear. And yeah, they're horrible. It's a really rough system. This is worse than some of the crappy systems that you get from Nissan or Nissan. So yeah, that was again very, very disappointing. You get all the representations that you want, 360 rear, blah blah blah, but it just looks like crap, you know, and it makes it really difficult to tell sometimes what you're looking at. The rear camera, the angle is a little funny. It's a little too low and a little too wide, and combine that with a grainy image, and it really is a bit of a disappointment. I'll put that back there. So yeah, a bit of a bummer in that regard. We do get, on a positive note, separate HVAC controls. So I always love that, etc. When you look at this center console area here, there's nothing here. It's amazing. That's probably a result of that small screen, but you've got your HVAC controls and that's it. It's fascinating. We see so much stuff on center consoles these days in newer designs. This is almost Swedish or Volvo-ish in its spareness, if you will. I do like this red trim. The leather that they use is the same, or at least very similar to the leather they use on the seats, and that's a good thing because the quality of the leather in this thing is fabulous. It's really, really high quality, very soft and supple. It's a nice thing to sit on, and it's a nice thing to touch day in and day out as you drive. So moving down from the HVAC controls, we get a little storage cubby bin there. I was optimistic when I saw it, and I'm like, yes, that's wireless charging. And it's not. It's just a storage bin. You can't get wireless charging on this car. Wireless CarPlay and wireless charging, for my regular viewers, those are the big two. You know, when it comes to modern tech, you don't need all the bells and whistles, but those two things are very, very important in any modern car design. And this thing doesn't have either. And that was a bummer. I'm not going to lie. It was a bit disappointing. It just, I mean, again, you know, a 4 or 5 year old design, it's fallen behind fast. It's a real disappointment. Moving on, we get, of course, our cup holders here. And even the cup holder position is a bit tough because if you have long arms, that's great. But when I'm sitting in the seat, it's a bit of a reach. So you're going to be leaning over the shifter to get at the cup holders. The cup holders would have been better positioned here. And perhaps some of these ancillary controls put up there. But anyway, nevertheless, so we get our standard shifter. We get our selector mode here from Drive and Sport. And that actually does make a difference, but we'll get to that when we're driving, when we do the driving portion. As I mentioned, we get our infotainment controls here. So you can control everything on that screen with this big knob down here. You get some quick access buttons, back button, navigation, take you straight to music, and then the home button as well. One thing I do really like about this layout and the system that Mazda uses is this little button here. It's extremely well placed for when you're just doing regular daily driving and you want to mute, or you have to mute, turn it down, turn it up. That button is great, and it's exactly where it should be. The Escalade has a button in a similar place, and both are excellent design choices. One thing I cannot skip is the piano black. Excuse the voice. I drove the exact same vehicle 2 years ago, and the piano black on that vehicle was 6,000 kilometers, was so scratched. I made a note of it in the review I wrote. It looked like it had been beat on for 10 years. It was absolutely horrible. And this vehicle with currently 2,800 kilometers has similar damage, not as much because the vehicle's newer, but it's gonna look like crap. They should have gone with some sort of matte finish or a tougher plastic or whatever. That sucks because it's just not going to age well whatsoever. All right, so center console. Center console is a slider. You hit the latch, you slide it back, and then it'll pop open. Center console storage is tiny. Not a lot of room. You do get is that a 12 volt? I can't remember. Yep. So you get a 12 volt, you get a regular USB, and another regular USB. They're not even USB-Cs, my word. So yeah, I mean, the center storage is, it's sort of adjustable, but it's very small. Too small, to be honest. The drive shaft's right underneath us here, so I guess that's why. But yeah, really tiny. I do like the sliding feature on this, on the cover though, and that's nice. So I did mention the leather in this vehicle. We've got red leather yet again. It works in this vehicle with everything else is black with a little bit of metal, sort of bare metal finish. And then the red seats do work. I like this leather. It is, as I mentioned, very supple. Normally because this is kind of a lower end, lower on the mid-range, I guess, if you will. You know, it's a $37,000 car, so really that doesn't That doesn't buy you much these days. And this leather is fantastic. It's really comfortable. It's very nice. The seats are heated up front. They are not ventilated. And yeah, that's it. But they are very comfortable. And the bolstering is really nice. So that's a good combination. All right, time to take a look at the back seats. So the front seat is in my seating position, all 5'8" of me. Sliding into the back, it's certainly doable. If you are the same height as I am, you will be okay back here. As long as your driver isn't much taller than I am. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. Headroom is just enough, another inch or so, less than even, and you're going to be bumping the ceiling. Leg room, you got an inch or two, but that's about it. So, and again, I do tend to drive closer to the steering wheel than a lot of people. So, otherwise back here, you get no power. There is obviously no sunroof or glass roof here, etc. You get the same nice leather. You get the center console cup holders, and that's about it. That's the back seat. A place to throw your children and pretend like they don't exist for an hour. Otherwise, not much going on back here. All right, everybody's favorite part of the video. So driving. Driving is where I feel like I've been a little harsh on the 3, and rightfully so. This vehicle is in desperate need of a mid-cycle refresh, just to bring some of the tech up to snuff. However, that being said, where this vehicle does not suffer is on the road. Mazda is known for manufacturing vehicles that drive very, very well. The 3 has always been a fun car to drive, regardless of how much power it has, etc. It's always been something fun to chuck through corners and all that kind of stuff, and it's always been comfortable, etc. I've been driving them on and off basically since they were first launched, now almost 20 years ago, and this one is a wonderful example of that. This has the 2.5 liter turbocharged engine. Gives you about 250 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque. That's a lot of torque, and you feel it. This is a very, very fun car to drive. When you put your foot down, whether you're in sport mode or otherwise, she'll go, and she likes to go. Yeah, and you really feel it. The all-wheel drive is a wonderful combination with that, because it keeps you driving straight and true, but you're allowed to have some fun. So you can chuck this thing through corners, etc., do some hill climbing. It's very, very versatile, and it is a very, very enjoyable car to drive. So typically with a vehicle that is set up to be a more sporty driving experience, you're always concerned about how does it feel to drive, how's the handling, how's the suspension set up. This thing is remarkably smooth for what it is. I've driven it over any manner of potholes today, all kinds of roads. I've done highway, I've done urban driving, etc., and it has been very smooth. I am very pleasantly surprised by that. And this is all, of course, factory set up, etc. You could drive this thing anywhere all day long, and you would be not only well taken care of and comfortable, but you'd have fun as well. And that's a wonderful combination. So here we find ourselves in a little bit of a hilly section. Put my foot down, and she just goes. Loves to go up the hill. It's a press car, so I'll try not to crash into any of these ditches. But it is a fabulous vehicle to drive. The all-wheel drive keeps it very stable, no matter how you're driving it or where you're driving it. And this is a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed driving this car. The whole setup is extremely dynamic and very enjoyable. So the red leather seats we get in this vehicle are not only quite good looking, but they're also extremely comfortable. The bolstering really does cup you and hold you in position, and you can put down real miles on this car too. If you are going to be traveling extensive miles, you will notice the road noise in the winter as this car is set up with snow tires. It is a little noisy on the highway. With sort of standard all seasons, that would probably go a long way to quieting this thing down, but it was noisy, and I wanted to mention that. As you're driving in the 3, you get excellent visibility. There are no obstructions for shoulder checking, etc. It's a very, very open greenhouse, which is nice. Sometimes lower slung vehicles like this, you sacrifice a bit of visibility, but not in the case of the 3. You always know what's going on all the time. So the 2023 Mazda 3 Sport in this particular trim level, top spec trim level, comes at tallies, pardon me, at $37,000 Canadian. Its primary competitors are things like the Honda Civic SI. You could also consider the GR Corolla, but that is another $10,000. It's also a pretty spectacular thing to drive, and you do get more power. And you also get all-wheel drive, which you do not get in the Civic. So for daily driving, I think the 3 actually makes a little more sense, because the all-wheel drive does come in handy. As much as I do enjoy the driving experience of this vehicle, I do have to say, I desperately wish it had a manual. When you go all-wheel drive, you cannot get a manual transmission in the 3. You can get a manual transmission, but it's front-wheel drive. I guess, you know, I mean, the accountants do their thing. Mazda knows perfectly well how many people buy manual transmissions, and the truth of the matter is, we don't buy them anymore. So they've stopped. A lot of manufacturers have stopped making them, and that's disappointing. I love to drive a manual. I'm learning to let go of that desire because there just aren't going to be a lot of manual cars anymore, especially fun ones like this. You know, I had a chance to drive the Nissan Z car, completely different class of vehicle, but that was a lot of fun. And we just, you know, those vehicles like that just aren't going to be around for much longer anymore. So while I do wish that this was a manual, yeah, it's just not written in the stars anymore, unfortunately. And that's a shame, because this that would make this a nearly perfect driving experience. So the Mazda 3, it's got to be, if you're looking for something that's affordable, something in the subcompact category, this has got to be on your list of things to drive. It does feel dated, far more than it should, really, given that it's really not, this particular design is not that old. And that's a bit of a disappointment, but it does speak to how quickly car design is evolving. You know, they're plugging so much technology into cars that naturally, you know, sometimes you're just going to be left behind if you don't stay on top of it. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for this video. I want to apologize again for the voice. I had about 30 seconds before I start to croak every time, so I'm really sorry about that. I still wanted to record a video, so hopefully it doesn't turn out too bad. And if it's crap, yeah, don't watch it. So I apologize for that. Next video, I should be back in fighting form. Thank you all very, very much for watching. Don't forget to do the subscribing, the commenting, all that stuff, and we will see you all on the next one.